Hello, I'm Rob McNeilly. Some of you may know who I am, and those who don't, just say a few words that I live in Australia, have a medical background, spent 10 years in a family medicine practice, and started to become interested in hypnosis. Met Milton Erickson, spent some time with him in the late 70s, and as a result of that, changed who I am, the way I was doing therapy, and the way I was then teaching hypnosis. And what I've noticed is that when people learn about Erickson's approach in programs that I've been offering in Australia and Scandinavia and Brazil and other places, um, when people come across this approach, they predictably speak about how it's contributed to them and to their practice. I know when I first began to use hypnosis, it felt like I had to pretend to be the expert and to have all of the answers and give the right directions. After my time with Erickson, I discovered that the emphasis is more helpfully placed on the client and helping them to connect with some resource that they've got disconnected from or haven't yet learned. So that when I start to focus on the client and what they're about and what's going on for them, what's missing for them, and then have the conversation follow that path about exploring with them what might be useful for them, I found that got my attention off myself and onto the client, and it was very helpful for me and my confidence, and very helpful for the client and their confidence, so everybody benefits. And I've noticed that a lot of people have reported a similar kind of experience when they start to include some of the principles that Erickson was speaking about, include that in their practice. One of the things that distinguishes Erickson from the traditional approach to therapy and to hypnosis in particular, but not restricted to hypnosis, is the way that he shifted the emphasis from trying to diagnose a condition and look for the cause in the past, and rather to shift it towards what experience they might want to have in the future for their benefit. He said that in his experience, people come to therapy not so much because of the unchangeable past, but because of some discontent in the present and a desire to better their future. When I first heard that, it made perfect sense. And when other people hear about it in programs that I'm teaching, it makes sense to them. People reading about Erickson start to connect with that. It's very pragmatic, very useful. And this may derive from the fact that Erickson was brought up on a farm. He was interested in the practicalities of what was going to work, what was going to be useful, rather than applying the correct method. And this can be fascinating to anyone interested, because it allows us, when we're working with a client, to be more creative, to see how we can work with each individual. And that's the good news and the bad news. The bad news is when a client comes, we've got no idea what we're going to do. The good news is when a client comes to see us, we've got no idea what we're going to do. And then with that sense of looking with curiosity to what the future might bring, to what the client might be able to reconnect with, learn, so that they can then get on and better their future, as Erickson said. That's the fascinating part and the intriguing part, and it's so satisfying for us as therapists to see the way this can work, the way clients can be so relieved to be given an opportunity to explore their strengths, their resources, their abilities, rather than having to try and overcome some kind of disease or illness or condition. One of the most succinct expressions of this For me, Erickson said to me that a woman rang him saying she'd been washing her hands obsessively for 12 years and she wanted some help from him. And he said to me, I was very interested to hear what that woman used to do with her hands 13 years previously. He wasn't interested in exploring, was there some trauma? Was there something that created and perpetuated the obsession? Just to help to reconnect her with what was useful for her, beneficial for her, so that she could get on with her life. So my passion in my work and in my teaching is to make this approach that was begun with Erickson of looking for solutions, helping to create solutions, rather than trying to correct defects or solve problems. And to let more people know about this, as many as possible, hence this video. I'm so distressed when I hear from some traditional approaches to therapy how people go along with something that's troubling them and they get labelled, and it can be a lifelong problem. I'm somewhat obsessive at my wanting to remove labels. If I get a new toy, a new computer, a new anything, I'm peeling the label off it. And I've noticed that even if I manage to get a label off it, we got a new dryer a few weeks ago, and there's a label on it, and I got that label off eventually, but there's some kind of sticky gunk left behind it. So I'm going to have to get some eucalyptus oil or something to get rid of the sticky gunk. So even when we remove the label, there's a bit of stickiness left behind. So it's really nice and lovely and a relief all around if we can avoid that. And Erickson's invitation that I'm taking up and piggybacking on is for us to shift our attention from what's wrong with this person that needs some kind of expertise from us to fix, and shifting it from that to how can we be with a client so that they can be more in charge of their own life, more back in the driver's seat of their own experience, more in control of their future and their present. And so that's the invitation, to find ways of exploring this. And I think that Erickson was remarkable in what he was pointing to. Margaret Mead wrote about her anthropological studies in, where was it, in Samoa, I think. And she was trying to learn the language of the local people. And she pointed to the sky, and one of the natives said, "Chumula." Then she pointed to a tree and said, "What's that?" And they said, "Chumula." And she pointed to the sea, "What's that?" "Chumula." And she thought at first, these people have got very primitive language, there's not many words, until she discovered later that chumula meant pointing with a finger. So I think that a lot of people have written a lot about Erickson, and they look at the finger that was pointing, they look at the chumula. Now my invitation is not to look at him and his finger, but rather to look in the direction that he was pointing. So thanks for listening to this, thanks for watching this, and it would be a pleasure to be in any way that I can contributing to your learning and to your effectiveness in your work and the benefits to your clients as well.